Somebody's listening, right?
Hi, Andy.
Hi.
Is anyone out there listening?
Heck yeah.
Oh.
This is from Love, Love, Love It. Totally listening. Used to listen religiously to Totally Lame and loved it. Your conversations make me laugh out loud every time. I drifted a little bit when you married and mommied since I wasn't quite there in life yet, but find myself wondering about this podcast recently and was over the moon to see it had just made a return as Nobody's Listening Right. I'm listening and loving.
Wow, what a nice review.
That was like the universe was nudging them like, hey, what are those guys up to?
Speaking of the universe.
We have a lot to talk about when it comes to the universe.
We have so much to talk about. Actually, before we get into university stuff, I want to say, last week we posted the clip of you going to Sprouts and coming back with the donuts and the pies and the muffins and the da-da-da. And I got both very well-meaning comments and very polite and respectful.
I thought, go on, and then I have to circle back.
Okay, one comment was like, just a gentle reminder that it's Andy's body. He can do whatever he wants type thing.
Amen.
Yes, amen. And my initial reaction was like a little, honestly, confused.
Okay.
Which I'll get to. But then we got another comment on our Instagram page, which is Nobody's Listening Right, on the video post.
Where was the first comment? Sorry for these details. I'm just curious.
I think it was on my Instagram. It might have been a message.
Oh, maybe like a response to your story. Maybe you posted
Yes,
it.
I think that's
There
what it was.
We got it. We cracked it.
It's these details
I
that
love the details.
really matter to Andy. So then we got another comment that was like, I love you guys, but this whole section kind of reeked of diet culture.
Ooh.
And like, I feel like when many people are saying the same thing, this was not many, it was two, but I needed to take a look at it. And
can you explain maybe what they were inferring for?
Well, I think a huge part of diet culture is shaming people for what food they eat. A huge part of like when I had binge eating disorder back in my 20s, a huge part of it is certain foods are good, certain foods are bad. And that's what I grew up with. Like my mom was either always on a diet and there was like no food in the house or was like being naughty and there was all the bad food in the house. And I think a huge part of breaking down diet culture is removing stigma from food. People can trust their own bodies, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, though. It's like and I might say something like, I will look back on and be like, God, I was so dumb and naive. But this really did not feel like diet culture to me. And I really did take a step back and look at it. Me giving you, like, I was disappointed that you brought that much stuff into the house at one time. And to be clear, this wasn't that you brought this all in just for you.
No, it was for everybody to enjoy on the 4th of July.
Right. And ultimately what happened was I threw away a full pie, 12 lemon bars, a donut,
I do think
and a muffin.
I would have kept going on those lemon bars. I was a little bummed that you tossed those that early, just for next time as well.
They were past their prime. And as someone who creates the product and wants people to enjoy it at its peak.
You don't want people to have it when it's sub your vision. Yeah,
these are kind of my thing.
Respect.
So to me, it's less of a food shame thing and more of a waste thing. I would feel the exact same. I would give Andy the same beef if he, and this is a hilarious thing to think about, if you'd come home from the farmer's market with like 10 heads of broccoli, blah, 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 blah. Now,
it is very similar.
This is not totally fair because there is also the element of you're bringing stuff that I would say is nutritionally not that added. These were all treats.
I get what you're saying. I think a better analogy might be if I would have come home and like I really went in on that like seasonal Target section of the store, and I had a new cooler, I had all these paper plates, I had like I just went overboard.
Yes.
And coming home thinking everybody's going to be so hyped about this, and you'd be like, what? No, this is way too much.
Because
and I'd be like, it's 4th of July.
So much of our life is dictated by space and storage. And we are maxed out in the sense that, like, our house is not cluttered at all. I think it's very lovely. But, like we talked about, you know, bringing the blender in, you got to find the spot. When we bring new clothes in, I am truly maxed out of closet space because I have one probably 3-foot rod of closet space. I don't think people understand living in a 1,200 square foot house from 1910 with 4 people, how limited we are. So, but that's also not totally fair. Mm-hmm. I think those commenters did have a point and a valid one. And, you know, I do give you crap for your eating because it's generally, there's a lot of quote unquote unhealthy eating.
You gave me crap last night because I said the whole family was having cheesecake for dinner, and you're like,
dessert.
Do you want dessert? I was like, dessert. And you said, do you want some? And I was like, no. And you're like, well, that's good. You're probably going to have ice cream later. And I was like, you know, I don't know if I'll have ice cream today because I've had a lot of dairy today. And you rolled your eyes. And we're like, what quantifies too much dairy for you? And how do you know it's the dairy versus like all the other crazy stuff you eat?
Because usually the dairy is a slice of cheese on top of like a double patty, something with bacon. But to be clear, I want people to know this is something in our relationship, and maybe it's not healthy, maybe it is steeped in diet culture, but where Andy pretty much eats whatever he wants. He has gotten better about eating veggies, I would say. Like you've definitely added nutrition into your diet.
If anybody's worried about that. But just to be clear, I have I'm not receiving any.
Yes.
I'm not receiving any hang-ups from any of
this.
There's
no world where anything I say could deter Andy, and nor would I want it. You know, he is a grown adult person. And we don't talk about things this way with our kids. Now, to the person's point of like, Andy's a grown person, it's his body. Yes, but he also is bringing it into a house where if we are just bringing treats and like Doritos into the house, I don't think that's good. And maybe that's not, you know, I don't think anyone does. Like, I think it's really important to offer growing children like lots of fruits and vegetables, which we do.
Yeah.
But they, you know, so there is a thing. If you are a kid and you're living in the house and there's so much of the treats, like what Andy brought in last weekend, I don't think that's great for the kids because I also don't want to be policing them at all. And
which we do sometimes because sometimes they go too hard in.
And
we really are
it.
very loose with the boundaries on it.
You can see when they go all in their behavior. I mean, it's very clear. Having said that, I almost feel like, you know, I grew up in a house where there was never anything, and I've talked about this. Like, my binging began when I was 10, and I would go to Kendall's house, and there was Entenmann's Donuts and Twizzlers.
On the flip side, I had a Hostess drawer, literally called the Hostess drawer at my house.
And we have like a candy cabinet now. We have a candy bowl.
We have a candy area.
We generally speaking have like baked goods around once or twice a week at least. At least. And I will say, you know, unlike me, our kids really can take or leave.
There's still Hostess donuts in the pantry, those individual wrapped ones.
Yeah.
From like 2 weeks ago that people haven't grabbed.
It's really interesting to me to see, and it makes me feel like, okay, we're doing things okay. They have no food hang-ups. Like, now, Anyway, I just want to
Okay,
say
yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard the people whose comments were there. I really took a look at it. To me, I think it is more of this ongoing thing that Andy and I have about you tend to be very impulsive sometimes with buying and come in with like the thing or a lot of things. And it's like, oh God, well, here we go.
And I also want to say, I think the novel thing about last time is I genuinely thought your eyes would have lit up when I came in with all that stuff that time. That's what was funny about it to me.
Well, what I will say, even though I threw away the whole apple pie,
Cherry pie.
No, it was apple.
Oh, that makes more sense too. For like 4th of July, right? Isn't that more out? That's more.
Oh no, there's not much more that's. I mean,
The
cherry
pumpkin pie was weird. That I got the pumpkin pie. I should have
pumpkin
got
pie
an
was
apple
weird.
and cherry.
But what I think is, what I wanted to say was, I really loved having a piece of pumpkin pie for breakfast. That is such a wonderful thing. So
Well,
thanks.
What I thought you bringing up this thing was about the video. There was 20 minutes of our life where we thought we were about to go viral because of this video. So the Nobody's Listening Right Instagram, which we just set up like 2 weeks ago or something. So it's brand new. About a week ago, I was like, hey, can I add this account to my phone too? And Elizabeth was like, yeah, of course. And I figured out how to do it. But I hadn't updated any of the like notification settings for this account. So I get the little pop-ups on the iPhone like, so-and-so's watching you, so-and-so likes your reel. And I just hadn't gotten around to like turning those off or like, making them not as crazy, and been kind of enjoying it because the account's been growing so fast. Thank you all for following that account. But so that morning, I didn't even know Elizabeth put the account up. And all of a sudden,
The video.
my phone was blowing up. And I was like, that's crazy.
Do you
That's
get like a
crazy.
I don't get notifications from Instagram. So do you get notifications every time there's like a view?
Not view every time there's a like.
Okay.
But it was like. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then I opened it up and I'm like, whoa, 1,500 people have already watched this. And then it was like literally 2 minutes later, whoa, 4,000 people have watched this. And I texted Elizabeth, I'm like, what's going on? And then I refreshed it again. 8,000 people had watched it and all these hearts are coming in. And I was like, we're fucking going viral. And then it stopped at like 8,050. It like literally just stopped. But it was like for a second, the algorithm had pushed it out. It was crazy.
We were writing the algorithm.
But go check out our Instagram page and follow it.
Okay, so here's the other wild thing that has happened this week.
Yes.
Last week we discussed, and we still haven't written it, which I feel bad. Let's not let this fall through the cracks. I can easily see what I'm about to discuss being a thing that we're like, haha. We discussed how we want to write an email or a letter to the editors of UK Love Island.
Yeah.
Who are geniuses, artistes. Like, it is so amazing. And also, as we discussed, the turnaround on the show is unbelievable. We've been watching it religiously. Now, my dear friend Michelle has a VPN.
Virtual private network.
And is able to watch the UK version as it comes down the pipeline.
Yeah, she's tricking the internet, making it think that she lives in the UK so she can watch it early.
I
or
hope,
in
I hope
real
we're
time.
not getting her in trouble with
lots of
the
people
authorities.
do this.
Anyway.
Did you just say her last name?
No.
Okay, good. Yeah, she's good.
But at first, I gave her shit for going to those lengths to watch this show. Now I'm completely on board and completely understand. And
we also only thought we were a week behind with Hulu, and then it became clear that we're 2 weeks behind, and that is crazy.
Unacceptable. So anyway, but we are all in. We're pretty invested in this season.
As we have proof from our last episode.
Yeah.
Like, I just want, the proof is stacking up. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
We're bona fide.
And then on one day this week, Andy said, when I can talk to you and Michelle together, I need to.
And I want to make it clear, this happened after the taping and release of our previous episode.
And I was like, that is weird. And I asked Michelle, can we? And Michelle rightfully is like, what the fuck? And then Andy had us both on Zoom, or was with me, and we had Michelle on Zoom. And Andy said his song is in last week's episode that aired in the UK. That we have 32. Not seen. Episode 32. Trust is the song.
By Sophie Lowe.
wrote and produced it with Sophie Lowe.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you just take it from here?
I don't know why you're tripping so much.
I'm not tripping. Maybe it's because you keep interrupting me. Like I'm saying the words and you keep popping and going.
Oh, it looked like you were looking for the artist name. It genuinely did.
No,
we're gonna rewind the tape. It looked like you were looking for a name.
I was just slowly getting there.
Yeah. Do you want to continue?
It's Trust by Sophie Lowe. God. And it's such a cool song. You wrote it years ago.
Yeah, this came out like 4 or 5 years ago, and I get an email. I'm just checking my email. And I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. And this really makes me feel like we're living in some sort of ridiculous simulation. It is absurd that we were just talking about Love Island, and we are so wrapped up in the season of Love Island. And then I get an email that's like, oh, by the way, your song's in episode 32. And usually it was also novel because usually when a song is in a TV show or film,
you get a heads up.
I usually get a heads up. My publisher reaches out because they have to get the rights for the song and all this stuff. And this was just like, this happened so quick. It's in tonight's episode. And then it's like, we'll figure out all the paperwork after the fact. It was just so absurd. And it is the happiest placement I have ever gotten in a show.
Yes.
Ever.
Oh, and I want to tell you, so we haven't seen it yet. But Michelle did text me and said, okay, the song plays at and then in all caps, crazy intense moment. Holy cow, the drama. So I'm so excited.
And when I got the message, so Sophie had hit me up, and I don't think there's any chance in the world that Sophie thought that I was going to respond the way I did. Like, oh my God, my wife and I are obsessed with that show. In which she was like, yes, I'm obsessed too. And then we were joking about how I have to wait longer than her. And then she was like, it's a really good use of beauty. Like, so nice. She got me super hyped up of what happens. And the song's super moody, which we knew the second we heard the song was going to be in it, that was going to be a dramatic moment.
Yes. So, let's talk about the simulation part of it. When you say, like, we are in a simulation, sometimes I think that, like, what if each of us, I mean, we've joked about how you're unable to trigger frequently, like, the paper towel hand motion sensor things in bathrooms or the faucet ones, like, to the degree that you've actually had someone come over and watch you trying to do it in a bathroom, a stranger, a man, and be like, oh, is it broken? And then you've said, no, I just, for some reason, I don't trigger these. And then they wave it and it works.
That's happened more than once.
And
I'm not real.
It's actually made me sometimes have panicked moments that, like, my entire experience is of my creation, and either the entire experiences, like, what if each of our experiences is our complete creation, or everyone's being really nice to me and acting like, oh yeah, Elizabeth, she lost both of her parents and then she went cuckoo, and then she thinks she ran into, like, her childhood crush, and, like, now they're married.
Oh, that's where you're going with? That's interesting. Because to me, this is just my simulation and you're just a player in it.
But why would you not be able to access, is it a glitch?
What do you mean?
Why, if it's your simulation, are you unable to trigger paper towels?
Because there's a glitch going on.
Okay. But anyway, but it does scare me then, because I'm like, why would I make my simulation have so much awful, like, stuff I can't even conceive of, horrifying shit happening in it?
Oh, sure.
Does that ever cross your mind?
No, I've had a pretty chill life.
No, but you hear about things.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But getting back to this thing,
sorry.
It just seems so absurd. Of all the songs in the universe, of all the shows, just to get that email that's like, oh yeah, your song, very last minute, it's in this show that you've been talking about and obsessing about. And it's just like this.
Well, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Now, this is more in line with the podcast I'm going to be releasing at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Does this make you believe that there's something bigger than us?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Or that there's just something else there's something else going on. Yeah, maybe bigger is a good word for it.
Don't protect yourself right now.
I'm not protecting myself.
Okay, because sometimes I feel like the answers I get publicly from you differ slightly from like, you know, our kid recently was like, "Do you believe in ghosts?" And you're like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Wait, what?" Because when I've asked you publicly, like on the podcast, I get a much more veiled response that is protective, I think, of you.
Okay, interesting.
So don't protect yourself.
I'm not protecting myself at all.
Okay.
I to answer your question completely truthfully, I think it makes me think that one, there might be something bigger, but to me that bigger is just something that we don't understand, and legitimately, I think it could be this more spiritual, magical energy thing. I also am not and do not rule out like the simulation of it. Like it's just something that we cannot wrap our head around at all, and there is something else going on. But I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Right? And so these moments like this crazy thing, just the feeling I get is like it's what are we doing? Like, it just seems so crazy.
Well, do you feel that way about us meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I often wonder about that moment because to me, like the difference for us in that moment is pretty big. Like my version of the story is this guy, you know, my first serious crush, 6th and 7th grade, who I talked to my mom endlessly about, you know, who I thought about many times over the years. I probably like dated or had crushes on people based on thinking like this is the type of person Andy Rosen would be. And also you came up to me like in your version of the story.
Yeah.
This story could have been so nothing to you in a weird way.
Oh, sure.
Like, oh, this girl I knew, didn't have a crush on, but was friends with.
Mm-hmm.
Although we did sign each other's yearbooks, my frosty soulmate.
Which is crazy. It's crazy.
Wait, put a pin in that because I have to tell you something funny about that. But you saw on the street and chose to like call out to. So like you were in control of that. It was a choice you made. It wasn't like the universe descending this upon you the way it was for me.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And also, of course, I have like the connection with my parents. There's so much more for me. Whereas like that story for you could have so easily been this girl I was friends with as a kid, hadn't seen in years and years. I chose to like call out to her and run up to her to make sure it was her. Like we had a fun night together and then I went on my way.
Yeah. But it was very magical for me. Even that first night. And I think in a way that I was more into you than you were even into me in that moment in time. I was more out the gate like, holy shit.
What did you think? Okay, I've never asked you this.
Yeah.
Because you recognized me. This is tough to reconcile. You recognized me from a time, the last time you saw me, I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
I was like in the pre-puberty arena. Not my best, not horrible. I look back on it and I'm like, yeah, it's fine.
Do you want me to give it a number?
No. God. Okay. I mean, I kind of do actually, but you're not going to.
I was totally joking.
I know. But you saw me and I looked similar enough to that 12-year-old. Now I'm 23 or 24 or whatever, that you knew it was me. And that 12-year-old, we have established you weren't like sexually attracted to. You didn't have romantic crush feelings for me because it was very clear when we were kids that it was not reciprocated. Like I had a crush on you. You had a crush on
Beth Bruner,
or Michelle McShane, whatever. So, you know, that's a tough thing to reconcile for me.
It's funny that that's like a thing.
That you
it's
saw
so funny
me,
that that's a thing for you, even though.
But you saw me and you're like, that's Elizabeth Lame. She looks enough like that 12-year-old I wasn't attracted to that is, I'm sure that's her. And now are you saying, here's my question. Were you attracted to me that night?
I don't know, but I'm assuming I was.
Well, that's hard to hear, Andy.
No, I'm talking about like the moment you're saying, like the moment you saw me or something. By the end of the night, I was smitten.
Oh.
Like it was the most magical of magical nights.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying
really
like you're saying like right when you saw me was I like, oh shit, Elizabeth Lame.
It's such a hot piece.
Yeah. No, that wasn't like the initial thing, but it's funny that you're even thinking like he saw me and I looked so similar to my prepubescent that, or like it. I've always thought this part of the story is funny when you retell that part because it makes no sense. It's like, no, I recognized you. Then we had this magical night, and then I was trying to lock it down from day one.
Yeah, and will you tell people and me how you told someone pretty soon after that I'm going to marry her?
Yeah, I told Kaisa.
Yeah.
I remember because the night that we hung out, I had to work on a Saturday, and we had basically almost stayed up all night, and I remember going in, and I worked with all these, 40 to 50-year-old women. And I remember telling them, like, holy shit, you won't believe what happened last night. Which is kind of funny to think now, us being closer to those people's age. If we worked with some, 20-year-old kid, we would be like, that's adorable. Like, I think I would be
so into that, so invested in that
totally,
story.
Right?
Yes.
And they were on board for all of that.
That's really cute.
But anyways, yeah, I was super sold the whole time. And in my mind, I've also believed much more in the soulmate of it all with you.
Yeah.
That you don't, which that's one of my frustrations sometimes is like, I'm like, you really do think there's other
Let me tell you something.
Ones out there for you? I really do think that we were supposed to cross paths.
I do too. I believe that was a gift from my parents. Like, the soulmate conversation is hard because on the one hand, I do feel like you're my soulmate, but I also then I'm going to undo that statement by saying, had I not gotten that gift from my parents, do I think I would have met someone and had a family and been married and thought I wouldn't have known what it could have been with you, and I would have thought I would have been in love, and I would have potentially been really happy depending on the person, and thought I have it as good as it gets. I could then think this is my soulmate. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
But I don't think that for me, I feel like it was kind of divine intervention, and I don't feel like, I don't think it could get better.
Got it. Okay.
And I told you this recently. I said, if you died, I would never, I'm going to cry. I would never love someone as much as I love you.
That is the sweetest thing ever.
I wouldn't. Anyway, now I'm going to switch gears and tell you something.
Are we going to talk about hemorrhoids or ADHD?
Hi, Otis. Wow, nice job. Wow. Good job, bud. That was perfect timing.
That was really funny timing.
Otis is playing Zelda and slaying.
Yeah.
So I mentioned in our smaller writer's room about your Frosty soulmate that we signed each other's yearbooks.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and everyone, of course, is like, what's the Frosty of it? Did you guys like Wendy's Frosties?
Maybe.
But I think I know what it is.
What?
I thought we had talked about this.
I do too, of a possibility.
I brought it up in the room and it totally crushes the magic and romance of it all.
Because it's kind of gross.
It's gross.
What do you?
And
think
we
it
were
is?
listen. We were 12 and 13, or 12 and 12, and you were leaving, and my best friend's older brother's friend, Doug.
Your best friend's older brother's friend.
Yes.
Okay. Whose name's Doug?
Yeah.
Okay.
Had taught us, like, we were in that stage of being giggly little girls, and he was probably like 15 or 16. He had taught us about BJ's with ice cubes, which is not really a thing. I mean, I know it is probably a thing, but it's probably a thing for like teenagers who think it's a thing because it sounds unpleasant for all parties, probably.
Okay.
But we thought that was the most like
Funny thing? Sexy thing?
funny / edgy. To me, that was like the craziest thing I had ever heard of. Like, as a 12-year-old, hearing even just what a BJ
Yeah.
is a bananas concept, let alone then you add ice into the mix. And it was like, and that was a Frosty. And I think I had shared it with you, and we had some inside gross 12-year-old jokes about it. And also, as we've established, I had a crush on you. And I think that now I don't know how we got to my Frosty soulmate.
Yeah, this story is plausible, but I also don't like remember you like that. And obviously at that age, I'm having all those dumb conversations with all my guy friends and whatnot. And I like, it's plausible, but it definitely is not. That's not written in stone for me.
Okay, I would love it if that were not the case, because like even in the room telling, you know, the soulmate part of it, everyone's like, oh, and then I'm like, but the Frosty part is this. It totally. I mean, and I don't want to rewrite history just to support the story, but I really wish that weren't part of it, and I would love to officially think like that could have been it, or it could have not been it. I mean,
also, do we have to kink shame BJs though too? Like, I feel like how you're saying this, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. On the other hand, I did love Frosties. Like Frosties, Wendy's Frosties. You know, when I was pregnant, I needed Frosties.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is. You know what's interesting that we've never done is we've never asked other people that we know to look in their yearbooks and to see if that's a thing. Was it just a thing that you and me had?
Yes. I would be absolutely bowled over.
Well, that's special enough for me.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
You're my Frosty soulmate. Let's make it whatever we want now.
Well, maybe now it's like we have this cabin up in the snow. It doesn't have plumbing, but it has shelter from the snow.
It
And
has snow.
It has snow during the winter.
Why do
until
you have that,
climate change
Why do you have
ruins
that
that.
like cute little carved wood sign that says Frosty soulmate? Well, when we were kids.
Anyway.
Love it.
Okay. Let's talk about ADHD. I don't really want to talk about the other thing you threw out there.
Fair enough.
I will someday, maybe.
Fair enough. ADHD update. I completed my evaluation, screening, something like that. Few sessions, few tests that I had to go through. And what's interesting about it, and we probably have this documented on a couple of these episodes, when I started learning about this, I was like, oh shit, this could make a lot of sense for me.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth started looking into it and was like, holy shit, this really could make a lot of sense. Throughout the process, though, I almost like started getting like, I don't know, like imposter syndrome or something. Like, and I think it was also like the being anxious about like finding out what the results were going to be.
Yeah.
And you and I even had a conversation where I was like, I don't know. And this is after I'd gone down a few weeks of being like, wow, this makes so much sense for me. But
Can I just paint one thing?
yeah.
I think when you see it and you're like, this makes a lot of sense for me, I'm going to liken it to Teddy had colic as a baby.
Okay.
And up until the day she turned 5 months, where the colic just turned off like a switch flipped, it was a different kind of hard, and like it was the hardest thing that we had gone through, save, loss and stuff. Having a baby, you just could not get to stop crying and always wondering what's going on. And I took her to the hospital and we got discharged with diagnosis crying baby, and so hard. And, my sister, who had 2 kids, like had come a couple times, like in the first 2 weeks where it's just sleepy baby days.
Yeah.
And then when I would talk about how hard it was, I think it was like, yeah, having a newborn is very hard. You're sleep deprived. Your like body is healing. It's all of this stuff. Then she came to visit me when Teddy was like 2.5 months old. And I remember so vividly her basically saying, like, this isn't normal.
Right.
And I know for some people, maybe that would be a not good thing to hear. It was so validating to me.
Yeah.
Like, this is extra hard. It's not, this is not normal. And so my feeling of like how difficult this is, like if the reverse had been, if it was like, yeah, this is how it is, I was feeling like, well, what is wrong with me that it's this hard for me? Like,
oh, right.
And that validation, I think when you started to look at things, and I think the world is not built for neurodivergence, like it's built for a very specific type of person. And you are realizing there are things in your life that have been harder, big things and little day-to-day things.
Yeah.
And when you're starting to look at it and get like, oh, validation. Oh, this was harder for me, actually. Yeah. It wasn't in my mind. Like, then you started to think, but then what if that validation gets taken away from me?
Yeah. What if it's not the thing? Then fuck.
Yeah. And what I said to you was like, because we had a big conversation about it.
Yeah, like the day before I was having my last session,
where she was going to tell you
what's going on. Yeah.
And I was like, no matter what she says, I think you have ADHD.
And it was really funny when it happened. But anyway, so long story short, I had my final session, and the psychologist did not beat around the bush. It was like, yeah, so you check all the boxes.
Yeah.
Like that is how the session started. And then she explained, and I feel so bad that I don't remember all of the things, but she answered all my questions before I even asked the question of like things that I was thinking about this. One of my biggest questions being like, I don't have the hyperactive thing.
Right.
Which is not the case for a lot of people. And there's been a lot more research about that, I guess. And so she kind of explained that aspect of it to me as well. And I don't know. It was like a very relieving feeling at once, and then like a very disorienting feeling at the same time. But I'm like very, very excited to take the next steps. I need to see a psychiatrist, and I'm going to try medication to see if that's a fit for me. And then just learn more about it and all the different, there's like so many different tools that you can do to like help yourself.
Yeah. And I want to shout out our nobodies who like, honestly, maybe just changed your life and our lives in such a profound way, because I don't think if it were not for this podcast,
Agreed.
we would not have gone down this road. Again, this is why we must always podcast. And any nobodies out there who do have tips and tools, I think that it would be very interesting to hear from them.
I don't want to hear any medication horror stories right now. Let me just I'll keep you guys updated. Or I almost feel like that's a tricky area in general.
I also don't think that those exist as that much, honestly, these days.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I had someone wrote in I think when I was just learning about all this stuff, the idea of medication was kind of weird to me. But actually nobody sent in like a very positive experience with medication. And then after talking to the psychologist about it. They were basically like, you should absolutely try it. For some people, it's a total game changer. For some people, it helps a little bit. For people, not at all. You'll find out very easily. Like, it's definitely worth trying. So that's where my head is at with it.
That's great. I'm very proud of you for going for it. Like, you made it happen, and now you know. And I mean, we've even talked about, like, there are things, okay, like we talked about your bedside drawer that I was just like, how do you even, like, I couldn't even operate in the world knowing there was a drawer next to my bed like that. You have since organized it. But when we had that conversation, which was just probably a month ago, I didn't have this information about you. I think a very basic understanding, and I want to learn more about it. But I already, like, I have so much more empathy and understanding and, like, compassion for you and how those things. I'm like, how does he even?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, well, that's how.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense. So
what's interesting is there's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I must have the notes nearby. But one of the biggest challenges for me is, like, people have, I forget what it's called, but maybe it's internal organization or something. But if you walk into the kitchen and you see that it's dirty, right? That you can piece together pretty quickly how you're going to clean it, right?
Yes.
And kind of make the steps that you want to do. Like, maybe you're like, all right, I'm gonna clean the dishes first, then I'm gonna do this and do this. For me, I would say half of the time I just don't know where to start, right? And then the other half of the time I get lost while I'm doing it. You notice this happens to me a lot when I'm cooking, right?
yes.
Like, there's shit everywhere.
Yeah, that's
in
the
a way
thing.
that's like, it doesn't really make sense either, right? But so that's like one of the challenges that almost presents, I think the psychologist said, like, it almost presents more like a learning disability almost, right? Which resonated so much for me when she said that. But yeah, so that's one example of, like, one thing that I struggle with. Yeah.
This is so interesting because our friend who's a psychotherapist who you asked for, recommendations, just texted me.
That's because we're in a simulation right now.
I know it does feel that way.
But anyways, to reiterate what you said, and I told the psychologist this, when, why are you here? And I mentioned the podcast and how obviously a lot of people have sent in notes recently because we started bringing it up. But this started years ago on our other podcasts. Like,
Yes. With the dyslexia. Yeah. I had something similar, which is interesting. Someone said, have you heard of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome?
Okay.
Ehlers-Danlos. Because I talked about being, like, really weirdly flexible. The fact that both of my labors started with, like, my water breaking. I talked about having prolapse after giving birth.
Yep.
Like, all of these kind of tick these boxes. I looked more into it, and I don't have a lot of the other things, but it is a genetic situation that did resonate for me, and I'm like, I still am like, maybe I have some, like, a splash of it or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And going into that world, I don't know. It is also validating to know. I mean, we all have our things and stuff, but anyway, thank you to our nobodies who have supported us through all of this. How are we on time?
I think we should keep going for a little bit, and I have a bunch of stuff I want to ask you, to be honest.
Okay.
Unless you had something you want to ask me.
I don't.
Okay. I want to get religious just for a second.
Okay. I'm scared.
Okay. I've been thinking
about joining the Baha'i faith.
How deep have we gone on religion lately? Like, we've kind of went down the Mormon wormhole. I have a lot of thoughts about it, and then all this horrendous stuff that's going on in our country right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked a lot about that. We don't have to get into that. And this is like such a dumb thing. American History Museum, for example, these awesome dinosaur exhibits that are around all these different museums. Do these devout people like take their kids to them and they're like, this is all bullshit? Because they want to see these dinosaur exhibits, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like the whole idea that like evolution's not real, the dinosaurs aren't real, like seems absurd to me, right?
Yeah.
What are so many people in theory have that belief, right?
You know, it's interesting having been raised Catholic, but
Yes.
like in the version of Catholicism where, I mean, we were like watered down Catholic, although I actually think I became the most religious in our family, like in my early post Frosty days and pre losing my virginity days. So between 12 and 16, I went hard in Catholicism.
Yeah.
Everything was kind of with a grain of salt. It's interesting because I see, you know, the evangelicals, like everything's such a literal translation of things. For us, I feel like it was much more symbolic. Like I didn't really think I was eating the body of Christ. Like I knew it was a bunch of wafers that we bought. And I believed that the like Adam and Eve story was more symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really believe that, like, you know, 3,000 years ago was when humanity began. So both could live side by side, but it was kind of like an area that's like, just don't look too closely at that.
Yeah.
And I just never did. Like, our focus was much more on other things. But I was just thinking about that the other day. Like, you know, learning about Scientology and being like, this is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It's literally written by a sci-fi author. Like, he did make believe before this.
Yep.
And now, but the Bible is no crazier.
But that's the thing. That I think that you nailed it. It's like us saying
by Christian nobodies were just like in one fell swoop. I mean, if they've been with us up to now, like, honestly, mad respect. Yes, God bless you, honestly.
But what I think is so interesting about your point is it's kind of absurd for us to be like Scientology is more bullshit than Catholicism.
I mean, it's just more recent. Like, we have more, you know, history to back it up because it happened during our parents' lifetimes.
Right. But so getting back to the like compartmentalizing aspects of it, that's what I've been thinking about because of all the horrible stuff that's going on, and we don't have to get into those kind of examples, but take what you want from those examples. Let's talk about dinosaurs, and also like let's talk about infidelity for a minute. You know, I think of religious friends that might be cheat on their partners or infidelity and whatnot, and like, oh, how do you reconcile that? Well, there's a nice out in a lot of these religions of confession and that kind of stuff, right? So I get that, but the dinosaurs, I don't see what the out is. So then it just becomes about like compartmentalizing, kind of like you're saying, like, well, you know, it's the dinosaurs. Like we don't.
But the dinosaurs. Let me ask you this, because the dinosaurs aren't humans.
No.
Like the Adam and Eve story, is it like, you know, it's like God created all of these things in the 6 days, and the seventh day he rested, or whatever this lore is.
Yeah.
But I think that it could be that, you know, he populated the earth with these creatures and whatever, and then people came because God plopped them on earth.
So maybe I'm missing the whole point of it. And maybe we're gonna get an email that's like, you fucking idiot. Like dinosaurs could be real, but it's just that humans never evolved from other creatures like dinosaurs. Maybe that's it.
Well,
Like,
humans
because they don't believe in
didn't-
evolution, right?
Humans did not evolve from dinosaurs. You know that, right?
Well, now we're getting into some slippery territory.
Wait, I just do want to establish
That there's no direct descendants. Yeah, we're more likely to come from our friends that we share, like, what? Don't we share like 98% DNA with gorillas?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as big of a DNA crossover with Brachiosaurus.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, listen, everybody's learning here. Then what is the hang up with religious people with dinosaurs? Just that, but they don't believe in evolution. Because dinosaurs, though, so they're like, that bird, there's no way it came from dinosaurs? Am I getting it all wrong? Am I getting it all wrong?
I honestly don't know.
There's a thing, though. Am I right? There's a thing.
Yes.
Okay.
There are definitely like hardcore evangelical Christians who are literalists of the Bible and do not want evolution to be taught in our schools, and because it's directly in conflict with this tale that there was this beautiful garden. God created man in the image of himself. Then the leftovers were this bitch Eve. That men, and also it's not lost on me that Eve's the one who damned us all to hell.
Yeah, wait, can you give me the Cliff Notes, Adam and Eve?
He took a rib from Adam, created Eve out of it. Now, why he couldn't have just created Eve the way he created Adam, I don't know.
So Adam's created.
Yeah.
Then God's like, he's going to be bored, takes Adam's rib, creates Eve.
I guess.
Okay. Maybe it wasn't bored. Maybe
I'm going to
God was
sound,
bored.
we both sound so stupid right now. It's been,
Why not? Well, maybe we're nailing it.
It's been a long time since I've read the Bible or even thought about any of this because it's absolutely fucking insane. But then there was like a serpent in the garden.
Like a snake.
A snake. And there's something to do with the snake, and there's an apple tree. And the snake offers Eve a bite of the apple, and she takes it. And for some reason, that taking of the apple was like giving into your desires against God's will or something. And so,
because she wasn't supposed to take the apple.
So this is what I was thinking about recently, and I kind of went off about this last week with the Roe versus Wade thing. But like, the fact is, all of Christianity is built on this very misogynistic, patriarchal concept. And it really scares me that there are people out there who take that as fact, because we are just fucked. There's no way around, women being second-class citizens and basically not having rights from someone who takes that all literally and thinks there's this man in the sky who is a wrathful God who, basically the entire concept of that type of Christianity, which is all of Christianity really, is that there's this wrathful God. He's damning certain souls to all of eternity in hell if they don't buy into his bullshit. And many of those souls, by the way, are like born into circumstances where they could never even find this version of the God, which is what pisses me off so much. He's an abusive, it's an entire religion built on an abusive man being in control.
2 questions.
Yeah.
1, could the serpent have evolved from dinosaurs?
Okay. Great question. All right. What is your second question?
And 2, can you explain the connection that Adam and Eve, the biggest retailer of sex toys, is that a clever name or is it not a clever name? Like, why would they have gone for that name?
Well, I have no fucking idea, but yeah, I guess because those are the first two people and they had to have sex to make the human race exist.
I have a third question.
We are all descendants, according to Christianity, of Adam and Eve.
Okay, third question.
Who, by the way, I think in Christianity are these two white people, which is hilarious.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Third question, though, why aren't Adam and Eve, like, cooler? Like, why haven't there been any religions that are, like, worship Eve or worship Adam?
Great question.
Like, they were fucking numero uno and numero dos.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't that seem weird? No one seems to give a shit about them or except what they did wrong.
It's all Mary and Jesus, which is, I mean, don't get me started on my theories on that.
Okay, last question about this.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of, no way you're going to know this, the timeline of between Adam and Eve and Mary?
No, I don't.
All right, so listeners, we'll accept some schooling on this a little bit, but make it concise. But a lot of questions.
Yeah. Part of me is so upset about it all that I want to reread the Bible just so I know what the fuck I'm talking about, but also I don't want to waste that much time in my life, but
it is interesting, and I think the other interesting thing
that
you're
really
saying
fast.
about the okay, go on.
I also want to say I know that there are lots of like parables and stories in the Bible that are very helpful and useful and have good points, but overall it's a very, very harmful book. Go ahead. I'm so angry about it.
I know, and we can wrap up on this because this is a much bigger conversation that it would be almost neat to have someone that could school us on it. But you already brought up the idea that people, a lot of these evangelical sects, if you will, really are going back to like an original interpretation or trying to cultivate an original interpretation. And that's also what's happening with the Constitution right now and the originalists in this small minority movement that's trying to interpret the Constitution like that.
But also conveniently, I mean, the Supreme Court right now is conveniently claiming originalism when it suits their incredibly conservative weirdo agenda, but then not when it doesn't. Like they're very loosey-goosey with that.
But what's interesting and like with a lot of religious stuff is like how wonderful to have this fucking book of fiction that can be interpreted so many different ways. Yes. What a system they've made.
Do you know how many times abortion is mentioned in the Bible?
I don't.
0. What make ye of that?
I don't know.
But in Judaism, it is written somewhere in Hebrew that it is like a tenet of Judaism that if a woman is pregnant and the woman's life is in danger, then the baby must be, the fetus, the cells, whatever, must be removed to save that woman's life.
Yeah.
So
we really do need to...
we need to stop talking about shit we don't know about.
Yes. I was just going to say, I really need to learn more about Judaism too, because that session I had the other day, yesterday, he's half Jewish like me, and we were talking about it, and he had a similar upbringing of Catholic and Judaism, and then also does a bunch of other spiritual stuff, but has learned about a ton of the stuff, and I was just kind of like, where has that left you? And he just seems like a very cool spiritual guy, but also he was like, yeah, but Judaism's like pretty legit cool. Like,
yeah, I do think, I mean, what I know about it, I like all the Jewish people I meet, you know.
So you're hearing me trying to embrace my roots of something I know nothing about, which is embarrassing.
What was I going to say? Oh, to your point of not talking about things that we don't know about, granted, I know we have like a public platform, so yes, there is validity to that. I really do think, I know that there are people who are like, you sound like idiots, and we're well aware we do, but we had dinner with friends the other night, and they were talking about they had been with other people who one of them like mentioned something that was surprising to our friends to hear, that they had different political views, and the guests of our friends like basically said something that's kind of like I don't know. I don't want to get into the details of it. But our friend basically threw down on them, like gave a 10-minute speech that completely debunked all of the things that were behind those people's ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was thinking about that a lot because I think that's really powerful for like when you know so much about a subject and are able to just like totally like sledgehammer someone's awful ideology that's really harmful to people.
Yeah.
In a way that you just cannot dispute it. You cannot come back, and it's just is awesome.
Yeah.
But it makes me nervous that like I wouldn't speak up in a situation like that if I didn't have all of the information or if I wasn't confident that I could deliver it in such a way.
I hear what you're saying, but I think to that point, no. You can have a conversation. It's almost you deciding, is it worth my time and energy to have this conversation? And there might be holes that they're able to poke in what you're saying, and hopefully there's holes that you can poke into what they're saying. I think it's more like zooming out and being like, is this worthwhile of my time? But
well, it's hard when both like in this specific case, the ideology that was presented was based in complete ignorance. And what's that? There's like this law of something or this theory that basically has been kind of proven, scientific studies have proven that people who have the least knowledge about something have the most confidence in their convictions.
Totally. Yeah.
And so it is kind of hard to engage in a conversation when because then there's this like medium knowledge area where your confidence is really low. You know something about it, but not everything.
Yeah.
And then then it goes up again. That's like when you are really knowledgeable about something, your confidence goes up again, like how our friend was able to just like throw down.
Sure.
But interestingly, your confidence never reaches the peak of the person who knows so little about something. Isn't that fascinating?
That's really crazy.
So it's hard to engage, like when the thing, and this is kind of what I was talking about last week or 2 weeks ago when I was like, stop both sidesing everything. Because when the idea or ideology that is presented is so based in ignorance, and I'm laughing in my head about, I'm sure there are listeners right now that are like, you were saying the thing you just did about religion.
Sure.
When it's so based in ignorance, it is really hard to argue against that.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like it would just frustrate you into a place of like, oh, I shouldn't have even said anything because...
Well, that's what I'm saying about zooming out and like, yeah, is this worth your time and whatnot? But just somewhat related to all this, I saw this clip going around. Have you seen this clip of Stephen Colbert? And he's talking to this, I don't know if it's like a professor or a doctor, about critical race theory. Did you see this going around this week? It's incredible because it's like it's just such an amazing argument about critical race theory about, and it's a black professor. I wish I could remember his name. It's Dr.
I'll look it up.
Anyways, he was like, let's be honest. Why do people get nervous about critical race theory? It's because it's usually white people are nervous about slavery and, their kids learning more about slavery, right? And just what a wonderful point that this man made was, why are you worried of your kids learning about this? It's really important, right? And yes, there were horrible things that happened during slavery. There was many black people that were enslaved and many horrible white people in that. But he's like, but there were also white people that were amazing, that steered history in the right direction. Why would you not give your white child the opportunity to what's the word? It starts
learn?
with an A. To
ascertain?
No, to identify with a white abolitionist. Why wouldn't you give them that opportunity?
Well, yeah.
Which is like, I just thought that was such a beautiful argument.
It's really sad, though, that it has to be framed like, it is a beautiful argument.
Yeah.
And it distills the people who are on the other side of things down to the reason why you wouldn't want your child to have that opportunity is because you're racist and you don't want them to believe that their race isn't superior and that slavery was actually justified. And like, that is the only possible answer to that question.
I know, but I think,
But what I'm saying is it's sad that that like an argument even has to be framed in a way to make those white people like approach it with that perspective.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that, but I
But
think
it is fascinating.
it is amazing though. It's like, you imagine these, white parents behind closed doors being like, I don't want them teaching this thing. I don't want my kids to feel guilty about being white, where this person was saying like, give them the opportunity to identify as the white person that they want to be, that is doing the right thing.
It's so
right?
fucking crazy to me too, because it's like, okay, let's look at the Holocaust, right? Where it was white people and white people. It was different. It's not coming down to race. It's coming down to ethnicity and religious background and whatever. Like, but it's history. I mean, I know there are insane people who don't accept it as history, but like it is history.
Yeah.
And just like slavery is. To say like, okay, let's say your kid's not Jewish and also not disabled and not Catholic and not whatever, like you identify with the Nazis ethnically.
Sure.
To be like, I don't want my kid who's not Jewish and not disabled and not Catholic and whatever to feel bad about this time in history that was a long time, not even that long ago, but like that they have nothing to do with.
Right.
Again, it just comes down to like white supremacy and how prevalent it is. And anyone who is against this being taught in our schools is a white supremacist, whether they realize it or not.
And also, not like, didn't we learn about slavery in school? Like, is this that's the other thing which I need to learn much more about this debate, which I don't understand.
Yes. Well, and also like
did history change or something?
Well, education, this is okay, not to get alarmist, but like the rise of fascism and like having read that book about Nazi Germany and, schools in Florida right now are like, they can't say gay. Like teachers who are in gay relationships have to like hide their identity. Kids who are at school, I feel like I think it was Florida, but there was a law presented or passed. I hope not passed, but a law was brought up into existence that was basically like if a student who identifies in the LGBTQ world is going on an overnight field trip, all of the other parents of the kids are alerted.
Oh my God.
So like just directing so much hate at the most vulnerable children. They have outlawed school books, right? That this is where we're like, Florida is like a fascist state at this point, outlawing school books that don't align with the state government's idea of what's allowed, which means like erasing LGBTQ existence, erasing slavery, like erasing history. And then on top of it, I need to like check this source, but I believe it was a pretty credible source. And I feel like it always boils down to money. I think it was Ron DeSantis, but someone in the Florida government is involved or is capitalizing on this because there's one bookmaker out of Texas, basically, that is now going to supply all the books to Florida. And I think it was DeSantis or someone else high up in the government. Their brother or sister owns that company.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like, it's all this insidious bullshit. And it's like, follow the money. Like they're poised to make millions and millions and millions of dollars by capitalizing on these seeds of hate that are growing in people. Like the fact that LGBTQ kids are going to be targeted like that. And it makes me concerned for, there are now lawsuits coming out of like military families who have kids who are LGBTQ who are forced to live in Florida or forced to live in a state by virtue of their employment where their kid is going to be subjected to discrimination, hate crimes, it's horrible. Sorry. I am so sick of like this energy, but it's so right there.
That's where we're at right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's going to be
And
a
I know
ride.
that some nobodies are this resonates for. Like I do get messages, and then I know that there are probably a lot of nobodies who are like, I already feel this, and or I just don't want to hear about this. But
yeah.
But I have to remember also this is about you and me, and we talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
We find it interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if anyone wants to go see what this week's video clip is,
Oh, wow.
check out Nobody's Listening, right?
On Instagram.
On Insta. And we'll be back next week.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. Shh.